Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're just getting started. Looks like we have several attendees logged in. All right, let's see here. I will share my screen. All right, hi, everybody. I am Amy Oath. Welcome to the Connecting the Corridor draft plan presentation and discussion. We're happy you can all be with us here virtually today. So today, I'll just go over our agenda. We're going to go over a summary of the plan and the process taken. We're going to talk about a few of the near-term projects, some other activities going on in the corridor, next steps, how to stay involved, and then we'll have a period for questions and comments. Just to go over how GoToWebinar works, you have an unmute and mute button at the top. And then all the panelists' cameras will be turned off unless they're speaking. Attendees, except they're on right now, attendees who wish to speak and during the question and comment portion of the meeting can then raise their hand or use the question feature. And then there's also the ability to call in or text in questions to 414-704-1696. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce all the panelists that we have with us today. I am Amy Oath. I am a long-range planner in the Department of City Development, City of Milwaukee. I also have Angelique Sharp from the Villard Bid, Benji Tim from DCD, Rackham, Cheryl Blue from the Corridor, Forrest, who is not on camera, but he's doing all the background stuff and will be taking all the calls, Jerome Local from MMSD, Kate Morgan from MMSD, that's the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, Mike Amsden from DPW Multimodal, Sarah Brigant from Northwest Side CDC, Tori Kress from DCD Rackham, and Yvonne McCaskill from the Century City Triangle Neighborhood Association. And Zan Leichling is also in the background. He's the planning manager for DCD. All right, so I bumped my next slide already. And all the panelists, you can turn off your cameras now to help with the streaming. So in the city of Milwaukee, there are 14 comprehensive area plans. These guide the future development, land use and design, and catalytic project recommendations for each of the areas. Connecting the Corridor is an amendment to the Near North Plan, which was adopted in December 2009. It's one of the catalytic recommendations, based on one of the catalytic recommendations from that plan. Also central to this planning area is the 30th Street Corridor Economic Development Master Plan. So what is Connecting the Corridor? It's a bit different than some of our other planning efforts. It really focuses on the implementation of projects in the area. Some of these projects are in the near term and some of them are farther off. They're more conceptual. The plan recommends a little bit over 45 projects. It identifies timelines for these projects, responsible parties, and next steps. The reason I said a little bit more than 45 is some of the projects can actually be split into a couple different stages. So the planning boundaries are Custer Avenue to the north, Burleigh to the south, and Sherman Boulevard and Fond du Lac on the west, and 20th Street on the east. Each of the projects falls into one or more themes. So we have mobility and streets, which covers different accessibility, being able to get around by biking, walking, taking transit, and driving. As you all know, we have a significant issue with reckless driving in the city of Milwaukee, and so these projects really aim at increasing safety for all modes. Off-street trails looks at both trail access for recreation and travel in the area. This area has a lower access to trails than other places in the city of Milwaukee. The same is true for parks and public spaces. Areas of the planning area have low access. So that's looking at, increasing the amount of green space and available areas for recreation. And then stormwater management, you'll see a little bit later that this area has had a lot of flooding issues in the past. There's already been a significant amount of work and investment put in, and there'll be even more in the future. And then the last theme is community informed. And this is a theme that came out of the planning process. And there are two projects here that kept coming up in a lot of different ways. And so one of the projects is art in the corridor. And so we've included that because a lot of these projects can include art, and it's a great way to really bring the community together and leverage investment. The other one is corridor cleanup. And so there's places in the corridor that could really use cleaning up. There's some dumping in places. And so as these projects moves forward, that's something that needs to be integrated into project implementation as well. And then I also want to mention that there are 3 aldermanic districts in this planning area. It's mostly District 1, District 7, and then a little bit of District 6 in the southeast corner. So why was the plan developed? There is a ton happening in this area. As I mentioned, there's been some investment done quite a bit by the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, the city, neighborhood organizations, and we'll talk a little bit more about the investment and what they're all doing in a bit. And they were all pursuing initiatives in the area to make improvements, many working together, and everyone identified that there was a need to put together an action plan to bring together these initiatives and improve coordination and set priorities and really recommend how to move the projects together forward so that they would have the greatest impact. A lot of these projects can build upon each other and we can really leverage the investment that's going into each one to have an even greater impact on the community. So what is in the plan? Chapter 1, purpose and themes. Chapter 2 is a history of the 30th Street corridor and a timeline of all the plans and events that served as the foundation. Chapter 3 is an area summary. So this provides a bunch of additional information about the community projects and work going on, and then a variety of data about the neighborhoods in the planning area. So it includes looking at a lot of the mobility concerns and the data behind the reasoning for all these projects to move forward. Chapter 4 goes into the engagement process and what came out of that. So we really tried to engage the community in different ways during this process. Besides just having big group meetings, we led some walks to look at the street corridors, and we integrated a resource fair with one of those walks, which was a recommendation by one of our partners, and really were able to then talk about a lot of different issues at the same time and invite people in. And then our partners were able to help us, sorry, this keeps moving forward, with also doing engagement at pop-ups. And then chapter 5, guiding principles. So these guiding principles were developed through the public engagement process and partner feedback and past planning efforts. The principles guided the process and shaped the recommendations, and they also guide how to move forward. So one of those is safety and accessibility. Probably can guess that that has to do with those mobility issues and reckless driving and making sure everyone can get around by all modes. Community engagement, that's about having genuine community engagement through any implementation and process. Sustainability and resilience, that's really making sure that projects that are put, infrastructure that's implemented really can stand the test of time and with climate change and things. And then health has to do with making sure that we're looking at health and equity throughout. The COVID-19 pandemic and the movement for racial justice and equity have really enforced that need for government to advance racial equity and reduce the disparities in all government operations. The CTC recommendations are grounded in public health and racial equity goals, and then they provide actionable steps and strategies to respond to community priorities in a way that will have meaningful impacts. With this plan, we did look at the current health measures within the area and the differences between the city of Milwaukee overall and Milwaukee County and the planning area. So chapter 6 is, hang on. Okay, is by far the biggest chapter because it has all of the recommendations for the plan. I have no idea why this keeps going forward. Sorry, guys. So it has all the details for all the projects. And as you can see, there's a page or two for each project, and they all connect in a variety of ways. All right, so chapter 7, the next steps and conclusions. So this chapter explains how we can measure success of different projects by recommending a various number of measurables depending on the project. It helps us be able to tell the story and see the differences that projects makes and learn different lessons by able to measure the existing community realm and access points to parks and trails and things like that to see what impact we can have by doing before and after measures. This chapter also provides a page that talks about how community members can stay involved to help move these projects forwards and really keep equity and community involvement at the forefront. Sarah Brigant from Northwest Side CDC will talk a little bit more about this in a bit. And now I'm going to move into some of the near-term projects and hand this over to some of the other panelists. We'll talk about traffic safety improvements on North 27th Street and North 35th Street, 29th and Melbana Park redevelopment, the West Basin Stormwater Management Project, and the West Basin Public Space. So Mike Amsden, if you want to take it from there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Amsden. I'm the Multimodal Transportation Manager for the City of Milwaukee's Department of Public Works. Two projects that we wanted to talk about tonight, two projects that will be happening hopefully soon here, early next year. As Amy mentioned, reckless driving is one of the biggest issues we hear, not only in the area we're talking about tonight, but also citywide. It really is a major issue that impacts the ability for people to get around our city safely and enjoy themselves while they're getting around, really no matter how they're getting around, if they're walking, biking, taking transit, or driving a car. So two projects we have coming up on 27th Street from Capitol to Atkinson and 35th Street from Townsend to Congress. We are proposing to revise the pavement markings to eliminate unnecessary travel lanes and add new turn lanes and or bike lanes. And in doing this, we are confident we'll make the street safer for all users. And really our primary goal is to slow down speeds, some of the high-end speeds that we see on a lot of our streets in the city. In addition, we will be marking all of the crosswalks with high visibility crosswalks so that people who are driving along the streets see the crosswalks and expect to see people crossing the street. And this is something we've been doing throughout the city for the last couple of years, and we have seen great success in reducing speeds and crashes and making it just a more enjoyable street and a more comfortable street. These projects originate from a couple different sources. One, they're both on what we call our pedestrian high injury network. So both streets experience a disproportionate number of crashes, especially crashes involving people walking. So we want to really slow down those speeds, make it safer for people walking, using wheelchairs, pushing strollers, etc. And a lot of what we're proposing has been informed by the community. So we've done a couple community walks, as Amy mentioned, on both corridors. It's been great to engage some youth, people who live on the streets, people who work on the streets, and really kind of understand what's happening out there and talk about ways we can make the streets safer. So you can see one example here on the left of what the streets will actually look like. So this is Old World 3rd Street. 27th and 35th today, they both have 2 lanes of travel for motor vehicles in each direction. The bottom photo there of Old World 3rd is kind of what 27th and 35th will look like. We'll go down to 1 lane in each direction with new left turn lanes where they currently do not exist, and then bicycle lanes and parking lanes in other areas along the streets as well. So those are scheduled to happen next spring. We're excited to see them be installed, and we really hope that they'll help with some of the reckless driving we see.
All right, thank you, Mike. And now I'll turn it over to Yvonne to talk about 29th and Melbana Park.
Hey, everybody. Took me a little while to get here. So 29th and Melbana Park was a park that was envisioned back in the early 1970s. And initially, it was a play space for children in the neighborhood. Over the years, it has evolved to more of a purpose. And that purpose has been to be a gathering place for the community and to be of multi-generational use. Several years ago, our neighborhood association took on the green infrastructure as a project to not only address stormwater management, but also to address economic conditions, meaning that we have partnered with schools to talk about careers in green infrastructure. So what you're looking at now on the second picture is the re-envisioning of this space. This was led by Alderman Khalif Rainey. We've done a lot of work. We've had community engagement with our residents as well as our partners. One of the things that we do in this space yearly is Art in the Park. Art in the Park is used with our youth and our seniors in the community. And one of the purposes is to create public art. Is it just moving on its own? Okay. Is to create public art. So a couple of things for this space. One is to teach careers in green infrastructure. Two is to create public art for the corridor and for our neighborhood. It's really important for us that we be engaged with everyone in the community, including our seniors and our youth. One of the impacts of this space is going to be that it will be a destination. That is the vision for our community, that we not only have it for the residents of the Century City Triangle Neighborhood Association, but also, or neighborhood, but also to have it to share with other folks within the broader community. Partnering again with other neighborhoods, Garden Homes, Amani, and the Sherman Park neighborhood. If you look at the scale of the pictures that you see a lot of green space there. There's going to be opportunities for walking. There are opportunities for entertainment with a stage, state-of-the-art play area, a dog park, which was one of the primary requests for the residents, and many, many green infrastructure amenities within this space. There's going to be a community garden facilitated by one of our partners. So we're just very proud of this space. If I'm correct, fundraising is upwards towards $1 million. So this is going to be a great grand space. The city of Milwaukee has actually committed a lot of the unused space that was out there. They've cleaned up the brownfields, and Tori can speak more to that, or Benji, but they've cleaned up the land there so that it's going to be safe for children. If you see in the middle of the picture there, there's an open space that can use for soccer and other non-traditional games, as well as basketball. So that's the Melbana Park, and we're continuing to engage with our residents to make sure and ensure that this is a space that is going to be embraced by the community, protected by the community, and be a destination. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Yvonne, and I apologize for the technical difficulties that we're having with the presentation. It kind of likes to go by itself. Anyway, and moving on for Jerome Flogo to talk about the West Basin project.
Thank you. Jerome Flogo, Senior Project Manager for Milwaukee Metropolitan Surge District. The West Basin project represents the last piece of a three-component system, and this is a partnership between the City of Milwaukee and MMSD that will span nearly 20 years from start to finish and be over $50 million investment from both parties to reduce the widespread stormwater flooding that occurs in this area on a too frequent of a basis that disrupts not only homeowners but commercial, industrial areas here, and hampers the area from future development if we can't solve this problem. This area has a lot of history in water, with Lincoln Creek being just to the north of the area of the West Basin. And there's a lot of water in this area that is trying to get to ultimately to Milwaukee River and out to Lake Michigan every time it rains in this area. Before all the development, this area was a vast network of wetlands and small streams in Lincoln Creek. And as the explosion of development through the industrial area and all the homes that went up to support those jobs, we pushed all that water into pipes, and the water still wants to go where the water wants to go. So the kind of overarching goal here with the three basins is to return this area as much as we can to the natural function of that water, give it a place to reside and slow down during these big rain events until the water can kind of clear out to make its way out to Lake Michigan slower. It has some filtering effect to that, and in doing that by still preserving the homes and the jobs and the future development capabilities of this area. Specific to the West Basin, this is a great shot where you can actually see all three pieces, but as with everything in this area, it's somewhat complicated, again, due to all the changes we've made in the land. So the railroad tracks that you see here, kind of center running from lower right to upper left, really is one of the major, I'll say, obstacles for water in this area. So we kind of had to sandwich this stormwater basin system into the neighborhood in 3 different locations. And the West Basin that we're about to approach here in design and construction, being the largest of the 3. And once all 3 are in place, providing a level of stormwater capacity and stormwater flood protection that's basically about 10 times what exists there right now. The site you see here, the big large green area, was a collection of various industrial use properties that were abandoned. So we've done some preliminary work here. We cleared the buildings. There's quite a bit of environmental remediation needs to be done on the site. We have a good jump start on that. And we've been in the community for about 2 years now, specific to the West Basin, trying to kind of get the word out, giving people a heads up about what's coming, and then ramping up to what will be some extensive public outreach. So we have community input, buy-in, and have a say on what this area will be, because it's going to be a significant change and a significant addition to green space to the neighborhood once we're done. The work that we've done locally, as far as smaller things to kind of educate and provide opportunities for homeowners when it comes to green infrastructure and stormwater management, Yvonne talked about that quite a bit. We've actually been out here for over 10 years doing small things like rain gardens and rain barrels, but it all works the same way, trying to manage water where it falls. So we're just about ready to move into the start of design for this West Basin. That'll take us about 2 years, and then we are aiming for construction to start in 2022. That'll take at least another 2 years. Then there's a few years out to get that all wrapped up. In the end, similar to the North and the East Basin that are on the other side of the railroad tracks and are completed, you can see the photos here of those. We want the West Basin to be similar. The way we'd like these properties to be in the end are opportunities for the neighborhood to have green space and recreational space when they're not needed for stormwater storage. So we would like these areas, when we're done, to be occupied by the neighbor, embraced by the neighborhood, and used by the neighborhood. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah Brigant and Kate Morgan to talk a little bit more about those opportunities coming up.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerome. So I am Sarah Brigant, a community development specialist with Northwest Side Community Development Corporation. And I want to talk a little bit about what I think is the more fun part of the project, which is the roughly 2 acres of community space at the north end of the basin itself. It's kind of nestled between 35th Street, Lincoln Creek, and those railroad tracks. So Northwest Side CDC has been working with MMSD since 2017. Really to begin the community engagement process on the project. And we've been building a lot of relationships with residents and stakeholders near the basin. We've done a lot of different things like door-to-door surveys, cleanups, all sorts of other different types of events. We even built the board that you can see on the screen that says, "I wish this was a" at the top. And then we actually had stickers and markers up there for people to write ideas on that board. And then some of the top ideas you can see in the bottom part of the screen as park, garden, biking, trails being pretty popular. So another idea actually that's not on there too that we heard from residents was to have space for a farmer's market or flea market. And so we did a series of pop-up markets this August and actually hosted one at the Basin. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully we can do more things like that as the seasons progress. It really was a cool way to physically bring people to the site and experience that space. But I do want to stress that we're far from done with the community engagement and the planning work as far as deciding what types of features are going to get included in the space. No decisions have been made at this point, and one specific note on this too is that we really want to start engaging youth in that decision-making process too, and really getting kids in the neighborhood and students at nearby schools and daycares to include them in designing that park space. But even beyond engaging youth, we really want everyone to offer up ideas. So if you have any thoughts on the space, feel free to either write them in the chat on this or put your ideas on that draft plan even give me a call or send me an email directly. There's going to be a lot of opportunities throughout 2021 and beyond as MMSD works with the design consultant and then hosts a series of stakeholder meetings and public input meetings to really develop and then ultimately finalize those site designs before construction begins in 2022. But our work doesn't stop there. I do want to be clear that MMSD isn't promising to pay for or build all of those different amenities that are on that wish list. But that is definitely something that Northwest Side CDC is going to take the lead on, trying to write grants and fundraise to make sure that that public space is really something neighbors want to visit and use and can really be proud of for years to come. Plus, it is worth mentioning that there's a lot of different opportunities to include walking and biking trails into this project and in the connecting the corridor area in general. We think there's space to have some different kinds of trails along Lincoln Creek in this area, and then even along the entire railroad corridor, which is another project identified in the plan. But once again, as these discussions really start to happen, we want to help determine how neighbors feel about different types of trails and different types of amenities and make sure that the space and any accompanying trails are really safe and accessible, welcoming to use. And then just overall, this whole project and this whole plan discussion really presents a unique opportunity to have some of those discussions about trails and all different types of green space features as years to come. But that's all I have at the moment on this project. So I would like to turn it over to Benji, or if Kate has anything to say, just for those next slides.
We just look forward to having your input. These spaces provide wonderful opportunity, as I hope these few photos show to you, not only for youth, but also for people of all ages. We know the importance of green space and health and trails and health. So we look forward to conversations in the coming months. Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Benji Tim with the City of Milwaukee Department of City Development. I'm the project manager for the 30th Street Industrial Corridor, and I just want to touch briefly on economic development. Although economic development is not directly addressed in this plan amendment, it is certainly a significant part of what's happening in the 30th Street Industrial Corridor today. And the Century City Business Park is probably, that's our economic development focus or centerpiece, if you will, for the 30th Street Industrial Corridor. It was the former A.O. Smith Tower Automotive facility. At its peak, it employed about 9,000 people. And so the city acquired that in 2009, and we did a number of years of environmental remediation. We put in new infrastructure and essentially set the table for new businesses, to attract new businesses. And this is really a regional business park. There's nothing else really quite like it in the city of Milwaukee. There's about 75 acres of land that have been cleared and that are available for development. There are about 5 companies who are operating there currently. And so we're putting the pieces back together for an economic development and job creation center. But we also are making investments in other areas, and you'll see a number of other themes on your screen: affordable housing, workforce development, infrastructure and transportation, parks, urban ag, open space, and brownfield cleanup. You've heard a little bit about a lot of those already, but you know, again, all of these projects have elements of all these themes wrapped into them. So Amy, if you'll flip to the next slide, we can start diving in a little bit to those themes. And I think Cheryl was going to talk about the Garden Homes Neighborhood Plan and Housing Initiative.
Yes, thank you, Benji. My name is Cheryl Blue, and I'm the Executive Director of the 30th Street Industrial Corridor Corporation and Business Improvement District number 37. Today, I'm going to talk about some of our work in the Garden Homes neighborhood. Garden Homes is a historic neighborhood nationally as well as locally that was the first municipally sponsored housing cooperative in the United States. And this area of the city has suffered as a result of some of the economic divestment in the area. And so we came in and worked together with many other stakeholders in the neighborhood to talk about how we can revitalize this area of the city. The area is very asset rich, has a lot of great churches, a lot of great schools. Howard Fuller is there, Lord Barbie Montessori School is there, as well as Dr. Howard Fuller Academy. And so we convened over 200 residents and 50 different entities in a process that took about a year to create the Garden Homes Neighborhood Plan. You can see a cover copy of it on the slide. We have 7 areas of focus, one of which is housing, and we came up with 31 goals for the neighborhood, 19 of which are in progress or complete. Last year, we brought together a team and we wrote an application to WIDA for low-income tax credits to do 30 homes in the Garden Homes neighborhood, which surround Garden Homes Park, which are 10 historic homes that have been standing in a state of disrepair for a very long time. However, there was a dispute in the neighborhood. Some people wanted to tear them down because they look really bad, but then there's other people who wanted to preserve them because they're historic. However, it would cost more to fix them than they were worth. And so we went through a process, we convened a committee, and we wrote a grant to WIDA for low income tax credits, and we received them in April. So next year in the spring, hopefully we will be breaking ground, which also coincides with the 100th anniversary of Garden Homes Neighborhood, which was built in 1921, and break ground on the homes and restore 10 homes in Garden Homes, as well as another 20 in the area. So we're really excited about the project. The neighborhood is very excited about the project. And we just know that revitalizing that historic area will do a lot for the area. Also on the slide, this mentions some other housing projects that have happened in the corridor. Bishop's Creek, Century City Lofts, Village Square Lofts, Washington Park Townhomes. And I also wanted to give a special shout out to a new project, the community within the corridor, which is on 32nd and Center, that will be revitalized into 192 low-income housing units, as well as a skate park, a dog park, after-school programming for youth and artist hubs, commercial space and things like that. So we're really excited about that project as well. Thank you.
That's great. And I'll just briefly touch on workforce investment. So in addition to working with residents in the neighborhood, we're also working with companies to bolster their workforce. And as we're working to either attract companies to the area or support companies that are existing and help them grow, we want to support them with workforce development programs. And we're working with our partners at Employ Milwaukee, WRTP Big Step, and other agencies as well. We try and maximize small business enterprise participation and resident participation on all of our construction contracts. And I'm very happy to say that all the work we did at Century City either met or exceeded all of our requirements and goals for those elements. Amy, if you could flip to the next slide. These are just a few other things, some of which you've already heard about regarding infrastructure, transportation improvements, specifically in regard to floodplain and stormwater management, working very diligently on those. Certainly the former Century City, the former A.O. Smith site was almost entirely impervious. We're adding a lot more green elements to that now along Hopkins Street, along Capitol Drive to assist with stormwater management and just overall aesthetic improvements in the area. There's a number of parks that we're working on. You heard about 29th and Melbana. There's also the MMSD basins that you heard about. Cream City Farms is another project that's a little bit outside of this project this plan area, but it's a brownfield that was converted into an urban farm, and they have a CSA program. And then Galena Park, which is also outside of this plan area, but it's an example of how we're transforming brownfields into new uses. And Galena Park is near 32nd and Cherry. It was a former manufacturing site, and now it's a public park. So it's all about transformation and re-envisioning the area and working with residents and employers to make that happen. I don't know if there's another slide. Nope, next one. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
All right, thank you to all the panelists, and I'm sorry for all the technical glitches. This file seems to want to advance when it wants to advance, so thank you for working through that. So in terms of next steps, this is the draft plan that we have posted right now. We'll be making some changes based on any kind of feedback and feedback that we've received over the last month while it's been posted, and then it will go to City Plan Commission and ZND in mid to late October, and then if they recommend approval to council in November. Once it's approved by council, it becomes part of the City of Milwaukee's comprehensive plan, and it'll serve as an official guiding document. So it'll guide our land use decisions with the identify neighborhood priorities and inform policies and public investments. This plan also really sets into motion the ability to help seek funding by having all these projects in a comprehensive plan where we've talked a lot about it with the community and have all these partnerships formed and identified. It really helps making funding applications a lot more competitive. And this is not only for city entities, this can help partners and community organizations look for funding for these projects as well, because it really demonstrates how the city is working with the community, and we invite all of you to really continue to work with us to make sure that these projects are carried out in a way that is anchored within the goals of the community. And then I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to talk a little bit more about how to stay involved.
Excellent, thanks Amy. So yep, Sarah Brigant again from Northwest Side CDC. I just wanted to take a moment to highlight a couple ways you can stay involved, really since adopting the Connecting the Corridor plan is only the beginning. So one of the easy things is to stay in tune with city updates by signing up for the e-notify system. This is a way to get updates via email for whatever topics that you're interested in, and it's really an easy way to stay informed. Plus, make sure that you're always contacting your alderperson when you have ideas, comments, concerns, questions, or certainly the relevant city department. If you notice any issues, you can always report things using the phone number 286-CITY, C-I-T-Y, or contacting whatever department might be responsible. Outside of the city, I mean, get involved with local organizations. There's a number of logos on the screen for all kinds of agencies and neighborhood-based organizations who are really doing great work. This is not an exhaustive list. And certainly joining your own local block watch group or neighborhood association can be a good way to get started. Plus, since there's going to be additional upcoming meetings and events related to each of the projects in the plan, try to keep an eye out for those and then attend future meetings, inviting neighbors to those meetings as well. You can follow local agencies and city departments on social media to stay in the know. Plus, there's some great resources related to green infrastructure if you are interested in adding green infrastructure to your property. Things ranging from rain barrels and rain gardens up to green roofs and permeable pavement. So MMSD's Fresh Coast Resource Center is a good resource for that. And then on the note of stormwater management, make sure you sign up for the water drop alerts so that you're actually notified when Milwaukee is about to experience a sewer overflow. Then you can be mindful of your own water use during those times to help reduce that risk of an overflow. It's super easy to sign up. You just text the word water drop to 797979. And finally, I know we want to get onto the Q&A soon, but I did want to end by saying, you know, just getting outside, talking with your neighbors, getting to know your neighbors, exploring some nearby parks and public spaces, going for walks, bike rides, things like that. It can really be a fun and easy way to see and experience your neighborhood. So yeah, that's how I'll end. Thank you. I'm not sure who's next.
Hi, it's me. All right, hi everybody. I am actually going to stop sharing my screen for a minute to see if I can get this to stop advancing on its own. But in the meantime, there are a couple questions that came in with the registrations. So Forrest, if you want to let folk, can you kind of read those off to us?
Sure. Amy, this is Sam. Forrest and I were talking, and I will kick off the questions for you with two that we got on the chat, actually, because I think they're directed directly to some of the panelists. I did just want to make an announcement also. I know we got a couple messages that unfortunately the Channel 25 feed experienced some glitches. So I just want to let those that are watching on the webinar know that if you have friends, neighbors, colleagues that we're hoping to watch on Channel 25, we will replay this on Channel 25 at some point next week. So people who don't have access to the internet will still be able to see it. We'll also post the video on YouTube, but we know that some wanted to watch on Channel 25, and we will make that an option. So the first question that has come in, I believe, is directed to Mike Amsden. Are protected bike lanes being considered for either of the traffic safety improvement streets?
Hello, Mike again. At this point, we're focusing on the travel lane removals and the what we call a road diet, 4 lanes to 3 lanes, with a focus on reducing speeds and improving pedestrian safety. If there's a strong demand in the future to upgrade existing bike lanes to protected bike lanes, it's definitely something we can consider.
Okay, thanks, Mike. The next question was directed to Benji. Benji, one question I often hear is gentrification. Some neighbors fear being priced out of the neighborhood once improvements are made. I think that question was for you to respond to that, I guess.
That's certainly not our intent, and we want to bring jobs to the neighborhood to make the neighborhood, and we want to keep the neighborhood affordable. We have a number of tools that we use to do that, but gentrification is not something that we're aiming for, and we'll work to find a balance in that. So I don't have a direct answer, but we've looked at, and maybe Sam, you could talk a little bit about this too, what we've done in the Harambe area and other places.
Sure.
For anti-displacement and other things like that.
Sure, I can answer that. So yeah, thank you for the person who brought that up. Yes, the city has an anti-displacement plan, and one of the key elements of that plan is that we've made a commitment to the Common Council and all the neighbors who've raised the concerns about rising housing prices leading to displacement, that every year we are going to continue to monitor all the signs that are associated with potential displacement. We've done that now for the last 2 years since the anti-displacement plan was drafted. We know that those pressures do exist right now. They're being seen most significantly in the neighborhoods just to the north and just to the south of downtown. So like Walker's Point, Brewers Hill, Harambe. We are seeing some of the trends that people associate with displacement risk. We've made commitments to all the alders that we're going to monitor that every year. And if those trends do start showing up in other neighborhoods, we'll deploy the tools that we have available to address that. Now, there are a lot of things that are outside the city's control, but some of the things we've done have been directing additional resources to housing rehabilitation in the neighborhoods that are at risk to help homeowners retain their homes, as well as preserving and creating new mixed income and affordable housing in those neighborhoods where prices might be rising. So we've been we've had a couple of high profile projects that we've been able to support in neighborhoods that are already seeing those displacement pressures, and that's a commitment we've made across the city. So it's a much longer issue. That's kind of the short answer. And there's also been recently a new citizen committee formed at the city level called the Citizens Anti-Displacement Advisory Committee. So it's going to continue to be a very big focus of all of us at city government. And feel free to kind of stay involved through the work of that Citizens Committee or being in touch with those of us at the Department of City Development. And I think that those are all the written questions we have. So now I think Forrest was going to read off a few of the questions that we got in advance also.
Yes, hi, this is Forrest Elliott with DCD as well. I want to thank everybody that's already submitted questions. Benji, you might want to turn your camera back on because the first one's actually directed at you. These are questions that we received from people who registered in advance of the meeting. And once again, on the screen, you can see the ways that you can communicate with us. Obviously, you could ask a question via the question feature. If you'd actually like to speak to raise a question or comment, click the raise a hand button and we can see that and we can actually unmute you. You can actually speak if you'd like. So Benji, we had a question. Could you speak about generally about the transit-oriented development or potential transit-oriented development at 35th Street and Capitol Drive?
Sure. So transit-oriented development is something that has been looked at in that area for a long time. back to the high-speed rail network that was proposed in 2010. The rail line, the 30th Street Corridor rail line, was slated to be a intercity connection between Milwaukee and the Fox Valley. And so 35th and Capitol was considered a potential location for transit-oriented development. That, of course, did not happen. That is not currently proposal. I am aware that there are at least 2 companies right now looking at transit-oriented development and passenger rail within various corridors in the city of Milwaukee, and they may be looking at 35th and Capitol as well. So it has been looked at in the past, and I think it's an opportunity for the future.
Great, thank you. The next question, this is also Benji, directed towards you. What's being done about the dust and debris created from the DPW facility at 35th and Nash? Was an environmental study done to determine anything in this area?
I'm not specifically aware of a dust issue at 35th and Nash. I'd like to know more. If there is, please provide your either phone number or email address, and I can dig into it a little bit and get back to you on that. I know there were some dust issues near 35th and Townsend. A lot of those had to do with a concrete crushing operation that operates in that area. We've been working with them to reduce dust emissions at that location, but I'm not specifically aware of anything farther north. There may be a lot of traffic on 35th Street, truck traffic and things like that associated with either the Department of Public Works or PAC Technologies. There was a logistics company in that area which had a lot of truck traffic as well, so maybe there was dust generated from that. But again, if you have a specific issue, you could let me know. I can look into it.
Great, thank you. A third question that we got is generally just about the Amani area and how this plan may relate to that. So Amy, would you like to take that one?
Sure. I'm just going to advance a couple slides. Gave up on the presentation mode, guys. So down here, the Amani neighborhood is just in this southeast kind of corner. So there's a couple recommendations that came in for this area. One is looking at better bike connections along this Keefe-Townsend connection that came from another planning effort. And then the Hopkins Street Greenway improvements, really looking along all of Hopkins and how that leads up into Capitol Drive and making improvements just in terms of the right of way from a safety standpoint, but also greening it and making it a friendlier and more pleasant place to be.
Great. We had another question that came in from somebody who registered in advance about recreational trails for hiking and biking.
All right, so this is the project map. I should have mentioned that. And so the purple right here, you see all of the trail projects that we identified for the plan. This is the 20th Street We Energies utility corridor. I don't know if you can all see my arrow, but on 20th Street is a proposed trail. Also the Beer Line extension just south of Hampton Road intersects with that as well. Looking at potential connections across near Lincoln Creek, both close to Lincoln Park and going down along the creek. Then you'll see a dash line along the railroad corridor, and that is the 30th Street Corridor Rail Width Trail that the Rails to Trails Conservancy and Route of the Badger and a group of partners has been looking at to see if it's feasible to have a rail width trail in that area. And then just north of the West Basin and the public space, you'll see a potential area for a trail as well that can be explored as one of the projects in the plan.
Great, so that is it in terms of the meeting, the questions that were submitted at the beginning of the meeting. I'm scrolling through. Remember, if you'd like to speak or have a question for anybody, feel free to use the raise your hand feature, or of course submit a question through the question feature. I believe right now, Amy, from my looking, it doesn't appear as though we have any other pressing questions from any of our attendees.
I see one. It looks like it's a question of who was talking after Benji, and that would be me, Amy Oath. I'm the long-range planner for this area. And so, you know, I have some additional slides that we can share for some other projects since there aren't any other questions coming in. Yeah. So this is that trail that was kind of asked about that is going to be looked at in terms of part of the West Basin project, just north of the West Basin. We also have a project in here. So as we talked about, there was community outreach throughout the process in a variety of forms, and they really helped us identify mobility issues. We know citywide there's a reckless driving problem, and we know that it was particularly bad in certain corridors of this area. And the community also helped us identify, you know, where else they're really seeing issues. And so we identified some particular corridors that we heard about the most and particular intersections, and that's reflected in this project here. The 20th Street Corridor Trail I just mentioned, so this is a closer look at that and what this could become. A great connection from roughly Rufus King up to the Lincoln Park area. Villard Avenue Complete Streets. So Angelique is on the panel here, and the Villard bid has been working really hard to look at strategic planning to revitalize the Villard Corridor, and they recently held a charrette, a virtual charrette, the first very unique charrette during COVID, and one of the sites was basically the streetscape and looking at how to make Villard Avenue a complete street that was safe for everybody and a place where people wanted to be. Do we have any other questions that have come in while I've been talking, Forrest?
Not according to my surveillance of our different methods. No, we've had no other questions come in the meantime.
Thank you. Another one that people have probably wondered about, you know, Capitol Drive is on the pedestrian plan high injury network. It is a road that is, you know, well traveled on, to say the least. And so this project was identified through the planning process as, you know, there's several intersections that people don't feel safe crossing. It's kind of divides the planning area. And we identified this as a project not only for just within the planning area, but really spanning Capitol Drive and looking at how to make improvements. So this is in the plan. It's definitely a project that's more conceptual in nature in that there's many steps to work on this project, and there's potentially many smaller projects within it to break up work. But it was identified through the process of starting the conversations to work at how we can make improvements to Capitol Drive through these projects and others, and separate from the ones that have already been identified. This is the Hopkins streetscape and right-of-way project that I had mentioned a little while ago in terms of looking at how we can improve what Hopkins looked like. There were some earlier planning efforts that had looked at some ideas as well. So really moving this forward to figure out what can be done to make Hopkins safer and a more enjoyable place to walk and bike.
So Amy, we actually have received a question just in the question feature here. It says, hi, Mike Amsden, are there any high visibility crosswalks or other pedestrian safety improvements planned for intersections on the road diet sections of North 27th or North 35th Streets where there is high transit ridership? Thanks. I can repeat that if you'd like, Mike.
Nope, you're good. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So as part of the city's pedestrian plan that was approved by Common Council last year, we are now marking high visibility crosswalks at locations where they're warranted. So one of the primary factors we look at are what we call pedestrian generators. So areas where there is a lot of pedestrian activity or people walking. So transit stops, major transit stops, especially are one of those primary locations or intersections we look at to better mark crosswalks. So what a high visibility crosswalk is, so actually the photo you see on the screen right now, kind of that small photo in the middle, that's an example of what we call just transverse lines for a crosswalk where it's just the two lines running parallel to one another. Those aren't very visible to people driving on the street. So high visibility crosswalks are very thick bars that are spaced every 2 feet apart. They're 1 foot wide bars spaced 2 feet apart, and they run parallel to traffic, motor vehicle traffic. So when you're driving, you can see the crosswalk markings much more in advance than you can those transverse lines. So yes, absolutely.
All right. Forrest, if there haven't been any more questions, I wanted to invite Angelique, I should have done this before, to talk a little bit more about what they're looking at for Villard, if she's interested in adding anything, or more about the charrette process, perhaps.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So right now, yes, we just finished the charrette, and we're working on a strategic plan to get that charrette out into the hands of more investors and developers, so they know about the opportunities that we have on the district. And I think everybody pretty much covered the main information about us. Basically, really, at this point, the first thing we have gotten a lot of complaints about the street, and so at this point we needed to make a plan. So that was part of the charrette, and I think you guys can see that picture at the bottom on the right. We can send some links to our website so you can see the full plan of the streets in more detail, but the hope is that we can restore Villard back to its original vibrancy. You know, I don't know if you all know, but Villard is the original downtown of the north side of Milwaukee. It's full-fledged Main Street, similar to Brady Street, and it's a walkable corridor that we'd like people to be able to come to the district, park, walk, and enjoy the amenities like they would in any other neighborhood. So the next process is looking for funding, partners to make it happen. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to answer them.
All right. Forrest, did any other questions come in?
Not from what I'm seeing, Amy. It looks like we've had no new questions.
All right, well, we are at 7 o'clock. To those watching on Channel 25, again, we apologize that there were some issues with getting that set up, and we will make this video available online and streaming through Channel 25 on another day. The Connecting the Corridor draft plan is up on the website, and I will go back to my contact information as well. You're welcome to send more questions or comments by contacting me, and we'll be getting more information to get online, and you can go check out the full plan there as well. Is there anything else anybody else would like to add before we go? Oops, sorry. All right, well, thank you all for being here and dealing with our technical difficulties and everything. We are really glad that you were able to join us in this virtual format. Everybody take care, and best wishes and safe health.